Stay tuned for the Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Tim Guest and director, magician Dale Hindman. Author, journalist Tim Guest was born and raised in England, when, at the age of 6, his mother took him to live on a commune modeled on the teachings of Bhagwan Rajesh. Where was the commune when you first started, Tim?
Well, at the beginning, the first thing I remember is coming downstairs when I was 4 to find my mother dyeing her clothes orange in the bath.
Is that right? How do you remember? Well, that's pretty vivid, though, isn't it?
It was very vivid. It was a strange, it was a strange event. It took some explaining on her part, as you can imagine. So I remember that very clearly.
So that started early, at 4 years old.
I was 4. It was 1979. Yeah, she just discovered him, and very quickly, a lot of her disciple friends, they called them sannyasins, came and were dancing and kind of jumping around in our living room doing their new meditations. So it was sort of a communal life almost from the day she joined.
But before your mother got interested in that, she was very zealous, and she was a strict Catholic, then she was a Marxist, and she was all these different things.
She'd always been looking for, she grew up in a Catholic family, she wanted to be a nun from a very early age. She was she always yearned for sort of a mystic, she had a mystic side to her which always needed to be fulfilled. And then adolescence came along, and I think she turned 18 in 1969, and there were a lot of other things going on. She discovered sex and drugs and music, and was always agonized by the contradiction between that and her Catholicism. And Bhagwan, basically, after a very difficult period in her life, came along and said, you can be mystic and you can have the rest, enjoy all the other things too. So it was a sort of a...
So did he actually use some of the teachings from different religions?
Yeah, he borrowed things from everywhere.
Yeah.
He was he used to say it was his kind of genius was to say, you don't need anyone else. I am the guru of all gurus. I am Jesus. I am Buddha. I think he borrowed his teachings from thousands of years of Eastern mysticism.
He filtered it all into himself.
And he borrowed his jokes from Playboy magazine.
He did, really?
His influences were right across the board, yeah.
So he really did pull everybody in from all different areas.
Absolutely, yeah. I think he was the first to really, and in fact he was also really incorporated very radical Western psychotherapy techniques too. He was really keen to incorporate kind of Gestalt therapy and Reichian therapy.
So the Bhagwan was very educated, we could say, wasn't he?
Yeah, well I think what happened
was
the guy, he was very, he was incredibly perceptive and intelligent guy. He, I think what happened is one of his very first disciples was so besotted with Bhagwan that he shipped over a whole library of development books and religious books. So he had, from very early on in his career as a guru, he had a whole library of all these influences.
Well, talking about books, I just want to make sure that our audience knows that the reason you're talking about all this is because you wrote this book, My Life in Orange. And it starts, I guess, at the bathtub when your mother started.
Day one, yeah. And really it follows our journey. And my mother fell absolutely head over heels in love with Bhagwan, and she went off to India, and pretty soon I followed her. And about the next 10 years we spent in and out of his communes.
She was a part of all these different sects. Were the people, these followers, very much like the followers in all the other
They were
places?
Actually very different. It was a kind of joke around the time that Bhagwan was the only guru that said you can enjoy life. So when a lot of Indian gurus were saying you have to do yoga on hard wooden floors and eat only pulses and be very restrained, there was a joke that his followers looked like Californian skiers. They were incredibly healthy and they enjoyed life, and they were a lot of very attractive women, and it was just they were very sort of successful group of people.
They had to be successful because they had to have a way to live, didn't they?
They did, yeah, they did.
I mean,
I think from the stories my mother's told me about the early days in his Indian ashram, people were, you know, whatever you could do to stay there, that was where, it was the only place in the whole world you wanted to be. People would smuggle drugs, or people would just do anything. I think the Danish mothers were particularly envied because they could draw their child support from abroad, so they could basically live there forever, you know.
So they did
a lot of wheeling and dealing went on.
When you went to India, then was the first place you went, India?
That's right, yeah. She disappeared for 6 months, actually.
And who were you with?
With my father. But I sent her, in the end, my father cut out a picture from the newspaper, which ended up being the cover of the book, of me holding a balloon.
It? And this was in the newspaper?
That was the picture from the newspaper, yeah. And so my mother saw that and realised she was missing me and came home. But it wasn't enough really to bring her right back down to earth, so she took me back to India. And then that was the beginning. She was tasked with setting up a commune in England that was modelled on the ashram. And so we moved around from India to England and then to Oregon.
Then to Oregon. That was the big thing. That's when we heard about it, I think, because he came there and he formed his own city.
That's right, yeah.
And then all of you came after him.
Yeah.
Did he have a lot of, before we talk about Oregon, did he have a lot of competition when you were in India? Were there other gurus? Were there other leaders in England?
I think they were. It's funny how many people I meet now who say, "Oh, my mum had this guru." You know, I think it was like there were a lot to choose from. But for my mother and her friends, Bhagwan was the only guru. There was something very, very different. But he was very, very flamboyant. You know, he was already driving a Rolls Royce when my mother came to see him when we went in 1981. He had these jeweled wristwatches.
To where? Where was that?
Well, he would drive from his home up to the auditorium in a gleaming white Rolls Royce.
Are we talking about Oregon now?
No, this is in India.
Still in India?
He had one
did
even
that?
in India, yeah. It was his first, yes, of many.
Oh, he did? Oh,
yeah.
Because that's what happened in Oregon.
Yeah.
So then he went to, why did he leave? Why did he go there?
Well, he disappeared. You know, there were various stories. His secretary at the time had American. She was an Indian woman, but she had married to an American man, so she had American citizenship, and she quite wanted to control him, and so that's perhaps one explanation. Another is that he was always his message was always geared towards Westerners. I think he banned Indians from some of his groups. He was always interested in. And I think he was also interested in the money and the power that went with the West. And so he disappeared, and no one actually knew where he'd gone.
And that was where he came here?
Popped up in Oregon, yeah.
Well, before they knew where he was he already making the city? Did he have money? Was he?
Yeah, they bought the land. It was 100 square miles. They used donated. I mean, they had donated. Their coffers were overflowing with money donated. I think what happened, they had 2 safes in the ashram. One of them was full of gold bullion, which had been their money. They converted the money into gold bullion, and they melted it down, and they made badges, and they tarnished them to make them look like bronze. And so all of the inner circle went carrying all this gold through. That's the story.
What was their purpose, actually? What was his purpose to go there? Just to be a part of the West and to have the money, or what?
I think so. It was because he was always much more excited by Westerners in the West. That was where all the power was, and his teachings were always geared towards the Western mind. He said it was very repressed. He said the Indian mind wasn't so repressed, and it was the Westerners who needed his very radical, dynamic meditations.
And all the followers got so carried away. How did they get why were they so carried away? Were they doing a lot of drugs?
Well, at first I think they were.
Really?
But they were very, very, no, but actually very swiftly drugs were banned in the ashram because it wasn't, but their whole thing was to indulge in every way. So they would do these crazy spiritual dancing, really familiar to us kids. We hated it. You know,
I was just going to say, when I read those parts of when you were dancing, and I kept thinking, how did Tim remember so vividly so much that was going on? Because how old were you?
Yeah, well, I was
8 years old,
going
9?
on to 10. Yeah, exactly. But they were very, very vivid times. You know, they were very colourful, energetic times. I really just remember them very, very.
You talk
really
about sneaking in the kitchen and sneaking around and watching them do things.
We were sort of under the floorboards, you know, the kids, because Bhagwan said the kids were to be really left alone and just to be who we were. So we would just sort of sneak around, and we'd steal things, or we invented our own. Actually, very materialistic counterculture. You know, while they were surrendering their possessions, we were fighting over Lego bricks. You know.
Could you leave? Could you leave the premises?
Well, in England, it was 14 acres. There wasn't much around to go. Sometimes we'd band together and go off to the heathland to play, and we would go on day trips to ice rinks and roller skating rinks nearby. And we'd have these very strange. We'd all file out this kind of maroon, line of kids.
But you were all dressed.
We were all dressed in orange and red and maroon. Yeah.
Regular clothes or?
Yeah, they were fairly. But we tried to get jeans.
Robes.
The adults wore robes. We wanted to be. We wanted to be kids of the 80s. We if we found we had these leg warmers that were dyed red. We did and we had blue jeans, but they turned red in the wash pretty much straight away. And we would go, and we used to sneak off and try and buy sausages from the fish and chip shop because
you couldn't have them.
It was a vegetarian commune. We weren't allowed.
Oh, it was totally vegetarian.
It was absolutely vegetarian.
In Oregon, the same.
Same in Oregon, yeah.
So everywhere he was totally
completely vegetarian. Yeah.
But so he had these Western instincts with his New Age sensibilities. I think you said.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah, absolutely, and he incorporated everything. So by the time he was here, his dream was to create something that had never been done before. A city, a city of, I think it was 10,000 in the end, which went up to 15,000 when they invited all the homeless of America to come and join them.
But they were sorry that happened, wasn't it? Because the homeless didn't have the kind of money he was looking for.
Well, that's partly true. That's partly true. And actually, it turned out they were drugging. When the homeless people arrived, they served them special, different food, and they were drugging it with tranquilizers to keep them quiet.
Oh, they were to keep them down.
So all these slightly more sinister things started to surface.
Well, that's what I think we should talk about. The sinister things that were going on, because did he have those purposes in mind? I mean, they started feeling very, very strong as a city.
Yeah, well, exactly. What they did was quite incredible, and people were very, very willing to work 12 or 13, 14 hours a day. They basically built a city from the desert, and they had hydroponic farms, the largest greenhouse in the USA.
So they were feeding themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. They had emus. They had a whole kind of strange livestock, and they were very, very sort of successful. Yeah, and
but they also did sinister things.
Well, that was the dream was very energetic, and everyone thought this was going to be a city in the model of love and meditation with the rest of the world. And somehow, what started to happen? I think Bhagwan, by this point, after he left India, was feeling kind of. He used to watch videos of Indian films through the afternoons, and he was taking laughing gas quite a lot, and he was giving these more and more insane, actually, lectures from a dentist's chair, and his taking laughing gas. And the people around him started to have more and more power. And so actually these very, very sinister things started to happen. I think a band of them went out with rubber gloves and sprinkled salmonella on the salad bars of restaurants.
They were like the first terrorists, really, in the U.S. Or I mean, not the first, but they started as... they acted as terrorists from their
Well, it's right. It was the biggest bioterror attack that's ever happened on American soil. 800 people fell, 782 people fell ill.
Oh, they did?
Yeah, they did, yeah. And it took a while to track it down. Everyone suspected it was the sannyasin.
And are you afraid to talk about this now?
I'm not, because this actually what happened was this is all proved, he was arrested for immigration fraud and came to an understanding, was kicked out of the country.
And where is he now?
And some of his disciples were put in prison for murder plots, for poisonings. So it was all, people have been convicted of all this stuff.
But where is he now?
He died in 1990.
Oh, he did?
Yeah, he died
What
in
happened
India.
to all those Rolls Royces? Because he had people bringing him Rolls Royces, didn't he?
People gave him Rolls Royces, yeah, which his disciples loved. It was just more, that was his whole ethic, that you could have everything. He said, there are many religions for poor people. Let me be the rich man's guru.
I see.
So yeah, there were 93 Rolls Royces in the end, and they were, when he was arrested and left, there was a kind of a garage sale, and I think a Texan Rolls Royce dealer bought all 93.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, they were custom. They had stuff spray painted on the roof, and some of them were armor plated.
I know you live in London, and I'm so happy that you were able to be here with us today and tell us about My Life in Orange.
Yeah, well, it's the story of the whole journey, really. It's kind of news from the commune, from the inside, but it's also a story of the kind of loss of, my mother. My relationship with my mother really fell by the wayside in her quest for enlightenment. And I was always looking for her in crowds and trying to find and recreate that.
So you had the same kind of looking that she was looking for.
She was looking for the guru, and I was always
trying
trying to catch her eye. Yeah, well, she was looking, with all the men she was with.
But now it worked out.
Yeah, well, he was arrested, and my mother, I left independently because I was really unhappy. And my mother realised she didn't have me. Actually, her then partner, who she's now married to, had also left. And then the guru was in jail. So I think she became very broken-hearted about the whole the whole journey.
Well,
we spent, I think, the next 5 years trying to rebuild, living together, trying to rebuild as a family. So it's about the sort of loss of that and the repair. We now get along fantastically well.
I loved it. I couldn't put it down. And thank you so much. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
And don't go away. We'll be right back with magician Dale Hindman. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome back to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Native Californian Dale Hindman has lived in Reseda all his life. After graduating from USC, where I went, and also a native Californian, Dale graduated with a degree in biology. Then he followed his calling to teach, which is what I did. Mm-hmm. Then he went into banking, which is not what I did because I can't add. But all the while, in the last 25 years, he had magic on his mind. Why was that?
Well, my grandfather was a magician for over 50 years, and he was quite prominent here in the Los Angeles area. And so when I was 5, he gave me a magic kit that said Dale's Magic on it. My mom was his assistant. She became my first assistant.
Is that right?
Yeah, so I grew up in the family of magic.
Yes, but you were still going to school. When were you doing all of this?
I was doing it, off hours. I would go and do shows on the weekend. I did a talent show in high school that got me interested. Then I started getting involved in the local magic groups here in the LA area. And
that's what I was going to ask you. Do you take classes to be a magician? What do you do?
You can, like at the Magic Castle, we have classes. We have beginning and advanced magic classes.
Did you have children coming in?
Oh, no, not
children to learn.
No, adults.
All adults.
But I was involved with, there's 2 or 3 local magic groups here in LA, and I was involved with those, and I kind of grew up in that group, doing magic, learning tricks, that kind of thing.
Well, how did you handle your jobs and also do your magic stuff?
Well, I had 4 weeks of vacation every year, so I used a lot of it to go around and do different magic shows, producing them, directing them, as well as performing. So, or I'd, stay up late at night and go to work in the morning. I don't need much sleep, so it's okay.
You're okay. Were you performing for your colleagues on the job?
Oh, yes. In fact, I kind of became known as the magician of the bank for a while, and they would ask me to come and do shows, produce magic shows for different magic events or corporate events at the bank.
Well, that's what's interesting, because that is kind of what you're doing now by producing and directing.
Correct.
You put together these things for corporate situations, don't you?
For corporations, for outside entities, yes, all of those together.
Did you retire actually to go full-time into magic?
Yes, I did. In 2003, I said enough of the banking. I had had enough of corporate world, and I wanted to go and do this full-time. So now I'm producing, directing, and managing some magicians. And
you're actually managing magicians as well.
Right. I manage 4 different magicians right now. One is the current world champion, Jason Latimer, who's been on your show.
Yes, he's been on my show. But when you manage him, then do you get him the gigs all over? Because you said he was in France now.
Right. I manage him for events all over the world and television appearances and all those kinds of things.
Well, how do you find those places? You just know where to put a magician?
Yeah, because I'm president of the Magic Castle in Hollywood, my name is well known throughout the world, and so people call me up and they say, hey, we got a convention coming up, we need some magicians.
I see. So that's how it actually happens? Because the Magic Castle must be the largest entity in the U.S.
It is for a private magic club. There are magic organizations that are bigger in total membership, but we have a big membership of over 5,000 members, and we are the only place that has a clubhouse like ours.
Do they have to be magicians to belong?
No, 2 types of membership, magician and associate.
I see.
People who just love magic can come in and they pay higher dues and higher fees, but they can be associate members.
It's always fascinating because people love magic. When you were performing, did you have a specialty or a special trick? Do people have special
Yeah,
things?
if you want to be successful in magic, you really have to find a niche. The piece that I'm well known for at the castle and around the world is called the Magic Square, where, because of my banking background, somebody chooses a number, let's say between 50 and 100, and within a minute I put up 16 numbers that add up to that number in every direction on a big board, and they add up in every single way.
Do you still do that?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Is that because you have this computer in your head and you can do it?
That's what I've been accused of. Yes.
Do you still perform?
Yes, occasionally. In fact, I'll be at the castle a week in April, and then probably later in November. About twice a year is all that. Yeah.
Do you do shows all the time at the castle?
No, I just work about twice a year there.
But do they do shows all the time? Is it like staged or mixing in with people while they're eating, or how?
We have four different show venues. We have the Palace of Mystery, which is a stage.
I see.
We have the Parlor, which is stand-up, 55 people sit there. And then we have the close-up room, which is only 22 people, very intimate. And then we have the W.C. Fields Bar, which was the actual bar used in Hello, Dolly. And we call it the W.C. Fields Bar. So we have a magician down there.
They call it the Mecca of magic over there.
Yes, absolutely.
I can see why.
Yeah.
So there's always something going on, it sounds like.
Absolutely.
And one of the things that is connected to the Magic Castle is the, I guess, abundance of fabulous people that you've had attached to the Magic Castle. Siegfried and Roy.
Siegfried and Roy are very longtime supporters, dear friends, very big supporters of the Magic Castle. And recently, young and hip Hollywood has become very enthusiastic members. Terry Hatcher was just at our award show 2 weeks ago, and she's quoted in People magazine saying, hey, the Magic Castle is the place to go. Jason Alexander from Seinfeld and now on his own show is not only a great supporter, but he's a good magician. So hip Hollywood loves the Magic Castle and very involved.
And Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, tragically we lost him. We just did a tribute to him at our award show. It was amazing to see all the magic that he did on the show all those years.
Did you guys teach him that?
No, Johnny grew up being a magician back in Omaha, Nebraska when he was 12, and then a ventriloquist. So he kept up his magic stuff all his life.
I always think it's so interesting how young children can figure out how to do those magic tricks. And I always think, do they have to go to school? Do they perfect it themselves? It seems to me they're always perfecting it themselves.
I think it's a combination between attending lectures, reading books, being with other magicians.
Maybe that's it. Is that it? Do they teach each other?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
I see. So you have It's Magic. It's a magic show that's actually on stage in Hollywood.
Correct.
Which you direct.
Correct.
And do you choose the acts?
No, actually the producers, Milt Larson and Terry Hill do, but we consult with each other because I know so many acts around the country. They come to me and say, hey, what do you think about this act? And then we sit down and we work out the show, and then I put the show order together and direct the sequences and all of that.
But you just mentioned Milt Larson, who is a big name in magic.
He's a co-founder of the Magic Castle.
I see.
Very involved here in Hollywood and the local Chamber of Commerce, and a big name in the world of magic. Yeah, absolutely.
When you say you direct the acts, how do you actually direct them? Because don't these people come in with their own magic acts?
Right, but what I usually direct is the staging. For example, let's play this illusion here. Let's use this lighting on that particular segment. Let's have this transition. They don't come with
their own lighting. They don't have a certain way for their act to be presented.
In some cases they do, but because they know my reputation in the world of magic as well, they defer to me to say, "Oh, Dale, what do you think? How about if we did this?" And then I'll bring it.
Do it differently for you than if they did it in Las Vegas?
No.
Because you're directing it?
The same trick presented with the same kind of styling. But what I try to add is production value, the sets, the scenery, the lighting, and make it a real experience for them and for the audience. So it looks a little bit different.
So it would look different than if they were being directed by someone else. I mean, just like directing a play.
Correct.
And I don't think I thought about it in that regard, because you think, okay, this is the act coming on next.
Right.
And who are some of the people?
Well, this year we have Chuck Jones and Company, who's a longtime resident here of California.
But Chuck Jones is a big illusionist?
Yes, big
illusionist. Is that what they call us?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit like an illusionist. What is that?
Well, a lot of people call them the box tricks because they're usually boxes. But Chuck has been known for his one invention called the Mismade Lady, where she's put into a cabinet, divided up into 6 different parts, and it opens up and you see all their different parts divided up, spread out all over the stage and everything. So it's that kind of thing, big props, girls vanishing, reappearing, guys getting cut up, or
that's the illusion.
Those are illusions, right?
But also, doesn't he have an animal disappear? Has he done that?
He's done that before, where he's had a tiger vanish, turn into a woman, or vice versa, the woman's turned into a tiger.
So he's done that for a long time, hasn't he?
Yes. Yeah.
And then who else would you have?
Well, we have Rich Block on the show, who's our master of ceremonies, and he's not only a great master of ceremonies and comedy and magician, but he also happens to be a very brilliant lawyer and attorney and arbitrator. So it's fun. He brings both sides of the house to that. It's really fascinating.
That's so interesting, just like your background. I mean, going professional, totally professional, but then having this kind of mystic, magical thing about it.
Well, you know, it's amazing. At the Magic House, we have a lot of people, doctors, lawyers, dentists, who love magic and are very good magicians. They do this as a hobby. And then others go professional.
Give me your trick.
Oh, okay.
I know you have a trick
Here it is.
for us.
This is the world's only invisible deck of cards.
Oh, that's
that's
your trick?
Now, if there's any else in the world, I don't know. Now, take the cards and go ahead and shuffle them.
Okay, this is kind of stupid, isn't it?
I know, yeah. Oh, wait, take them out of the case first.
Oh.
All right.
I told you it was stupid.
Okay, give me the case. You just give me the case.
Sorry.
Great. All right.
Okay.
Now go ahead and keep on shuffling them.
Can I just shuffle them like
there
this?
There you go. Now I'm going to turn my head. Now look at the cards, Joan.
Yeah.
Pick out one card and turn it upside down in the deck.
Okay.
So turn it upside down in the deck.
Okay.
Okay, the one
Upside
card
down.
that you looked at.
Okay.
All right, put them
Upside
back.
down.
Good.
Okay.
Now put them back into the case.
Okay.
Okay, now what we're going to do on the count of 3, we're going to point right here to see if the cards can appear. 1, 2, 3. There they are. Now that's the deck of cards. Now, I've only known you for a little bit, but you don't look like you're an obvious type of person. The obvious person would choose the king, the queen, the ace, but you look like you're not an obvious person. What's the name of the card that you chose?
Ace of Hearts.
Oh, you chose the Ace of Hearts.
You just said I wouldn't choose
Well,
it.
I didn't think you would, Joan.
It sounded really good to me.
Well, here's the top card. That's just a joker. We don't use that. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go through these cards, and we're going to see if we can find one card and one card only that is actually reversed in the deck.
Oh my gosh.
And the
Yep,
very
there it
last
is.
card, there is one card and one card only reversed in the deck.
Do I
Wouldn't
get
it
to
be
take it?
amazing?
Oh,
Get
it's
that.
not. How did you know that? You read my mind. I swear. How did you do that? I almost
Very
changed.
well.
I almost changed midair. I was going like, what did I remember? What did I remember? Oh, Dale. No wonder you direct things. No wonder. I mean, that invisible deck was kind of stupid, but look what you did with it.
Well, that's a lot of magic. It can be
Oh
silly.
my gosh. Do you, I've got to get back to your show. Do you repeat the same people? a
No,
lot?
every year we try to have a whole different show. And depending, if we're out on tour, we'll repeat some of the acts because we're going to different cities. But here in Hollywood, we want to make sure that every year we have a different cast so that people can experience different
Oh,
magicians.
I see. And do you bring them from Europe?
We do. In fact, the act closing the first half is coming from Luxembourg.
How do the European people compare to the Americans?
You know what? It's fascinating. They have a little bit different approach to magic in terms of romance and feeling and all of that. In America, we tend to go for the bombastic thing, and what I find is the Europeans go for more romance and storytelling. But both bring a different level to the audience.
Well, you're still making me laugh. I can't believe it. And thank you for being with
My
us
pleasure.
today.
Thanks, Joan.
And thank you for watching the Joan Quinn Profiles today. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 90017. Bye.